Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to do is I want to talk about 5 watches that I think have been generally overlooked in terms of good for the collector, but also in some very practical terms too. I mean, there's wearing a watch, you want to be able to tell the time and whatever else it has to tell you. One other thing is that it appears as over a very short period of time, the next couple of years, there's going to be more and more silicon in hairsprings, balances, escapements. The reason for this is that they work better. I mean, in terms of getting an accurate time, because they're not as affected by heat and cold, and they're totally non-magnetic. And some people say, well, that's great, but by the same token, we could say, well, quartz is better. Why don't we use quartz? And this is sort of where I'm coming from. I prefer non-silicon in that area, but I don't think there are going to be many that are not silicon. All of Patek Philippe's are silicon. I think they have been actually since about 2007. And the only thing I think that's holding things up is that it's a certain patent that's going to be running out pretty soon. And so a lot of other companies are going to be putting them in. But to me, that's a shame, but that's me, okay? Somebody say, well, you're old-fashioned. They start telling me stories about the periodic table of elements. I know that table very well. But to me, it's sort of like painting the Mona Lisa with acrylics. It's something that is, acrylics in certain ways are much better than the kinds of paints they had during who was it? It was Michelangelo's time. But the point is that all 5 of these have hairsprings made of some kind of metal. For example, the H. Moser Heritage Center Seconds Funky Blue has what's called a Strassmann hairspring. That's a combination of niobium and titanium. And H. Moser sells way more of those than they do watches, so a lot of other companies use them too. But to the point, this Heritage Center Seconds Funky Blue, I refer to it as an executive sports watch because it's a kind of thing that isn't childish. I mean, there's some with all kinds of buttons and so on and so forth that look like fun to play with, but in terms of your day-to-day uses, they're not the most useful thing. Something you can glance at, tell the time, and looks good. And I think plus being a little sporty, you don't have to wear it all the time, just at work, but something you could also wear on a more informal occasion. I think it's a wonderful watch. Caliber HMC 200, 3 hertz, 21,600 semi-oscillations per hour. It's picking up features from Moser's past that are both classic and clear. So I think that's a neat one to have. And like I said, I think it's been somewhat overlooked. 15,300. It's not a cheap watch, but I think it's a very good one. Now, this next one is one I've talked about before. The more I look at it, the more I find out about it, the more I like it. This is a Rolex Air King. And I refer to it as unobtrusive quality. And the reason it's unobtrusive, it isn't one of those watches that screams, look at me. It's a nice clear watch for telling time, 3 hands. But the thing I like about it is that it comes from a supersonic car called the Bloodhound. And the another thing about it I like, for some reason, a lot of Rolex owners don't think much of the Air King. I think that's a shame. But on the other hand, they think the Milgauss is really a neat watch. I think so too. But they have the same movement. Both the Air King and the Milgauss have the 3131 COSC certified movement. So, except this one costs about $1,500 less, and like I said, it's not as popular. Uh, where they get the style from, Rolex was contracted some years ago to make the dials for this supersonic land racer called the Bloodhound. And they made this speedometer. You can see it in the lower right there. The speedometer and the chronograph for it, and they have that. That's where the sense of the Air King's dial came from. I think it's a neat watch. 6450 is the MSRP. Who knows what Rolex is going to charge for that? Okay, this next one is Parmigiani Fleurier Tonda 1950 Lune Steel Abyss. I refer to this as a two-hemisphere class. One of the things I think is that we tend to think in terms of one hemisphere. I think those of us in the northern hemisphere, when we have a lunar watch of some sort, it just is for the northern hemisphere. In fact, the one I have a Christian Vanderklaw, and it's very much just northern hemisphere. This watch is a very, very to me, ingenious solution to that. And you have both for the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and you can look at the moon phases for both of them. That moon phase, it really isn't the most practical sort of add-on to a watch, but they're sort of cool to have. This one's got a caliber PF708, 48 hours ultra thin, with a micro rotor automatic winding. Now, this is another thing about this one. Nice and thin, because of the micro rotor, is it instead of stacking on a rotor on top, the micro rotor fits in, and so you end up with a thinner watch. I think this is a really cool watch. 12,800. One thing about Parmigiani's is that you can often get better prices on secondary markets for it. And I have two of them, and they're wonderful watches. Not this one, though. Okay, this one is another watch. This one's become more and more a favorite of mine. This is a Harbinger 2 Irwin. Now, the Irwin is sort of, you might call the son of Felix. This watch is made with a watchmaker's precision, and they're, for the most part, these watches are handmade. They only make a few hundred of them a year at Harbinger. Richard Harbinger is a world-class watchmaker, and Marie Harbinger she works with them on these different designs. Now, this particular design that I like about it, it has jumping seconds. Now, you might say, well, big deal. Every quartz has jumping seconds, but the point of this is that the mechanism, and if you look down there in the lower right, you can see the mechanism that Harbinger added to what was essentially the Felix to bring in this the jumping seconds. Now, the jumping seconds, really, they used to call these the doctor's watches, because if with the jumping seconds, it was a little easier to take pulse and count pulses. So they'd put on the wrist and count it with doctor's watches. Also, too, one thing I'm glad to see Harbinger 2 do is that they have some different options for dials and hands. The smaller one with the black dial and sort of like it looks like cathedral hands and a syringe hand on that one. So you have some choices there. The price is great for, I don't know, any other watch. By the way, too, if you get a Harbinger 2, by and large, you have to buy it new, because people who have them don't sell them. They're very hard to find on the used market. And if they go on the used market, they don't last very long. They're gone. So, but the price is so good that when I got my Felix, I had no problem paying full price. Well, a few watches I never negotiated for. This to me is a hidden gem Love it. Now, the final one is Piaget, and this is the Piaget Polo. And I refer to it as a versatile watch because it has more than a single setting. To me, it would be a great, what I call an office watch, or a watch that you would wear to with a coat and tie and so forth, but also you could use it in a fairly informal setting, especially in steel. Now, this one has the Piaget 111, 111 is 0P movement in it, 4 hertz, 50 hours. It has a Glucider balance, and that is a beryllium bronze. It's an alloy of beryllium, copper, and iron. And the watch is based on the Cartier 1904 PSMC architecture. Now, this is a case where your Piaget and Cartier are both owned by the Richemont group, and so they let each other use their different movements. For this particular watch with the leather or gator band, that you can also get them in green. They come in blue and green. I like them both. And there's 9,900. Again, these are not cheap, but they're not up in the $20,000 branch either. This is another watch I have found that you can find some pretty good deals on the secondary market for these watches. Anyway, these are 5 watches I think that have been overlooked, undervalued, and I think they're pretty cool watches, and something you might want to think about if you're looking for this kind of watch. Notice I had no chronographs in this group. There are plenty of really great chronographs out there, but there's been a lot of talk about chronographs, so I thought I'd talk about these. These are sort of some level of office watch, from sort of an ordinary kind of thing to more executive level without breaking the bank. Let me know what you think, and as always, this is an invitation to subscribe if you like. Till next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection.